Worst workplace accidents around the world. When you're growing your business, the last thing you want to deal with is a workplace accident or injury. But how do you handle it? What are the worst accidents that have ever happened? First and foremost, hello and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the worst workplace accidents that have ever happened around the world. Accidents in the workplace can lead to not only physical harm, but also undue stress and hardship for both employees and the employers. To prevent accidents from happening, start with general awareness and understanding of the safety risks in your work environment. Then, you'll need to pair that knowledge with an action plan for accident prevention to make sure the potential risks you've identified do not introduce harm to your workplace. Nevertheless, some people either by personal foolery or by uncontrollable situations have ended up being victims of certain workplace accidents. Now, what are these accidents and what are the stats? Let's take a dive in on them in this video. Australia. Accident leaves miner a quadriplegic. The Broken Hill company, Paralia, was fined $260,000 after a 2008 accident that left a worker quadriplegic. The rod flight was injured when the front-end loader he was operating overturned, trapping him underneath. The court found that the vehicle's brakes, warning lights, and alarms were defective due to inadequate maintenance. The company pleaded guilty for failing to ensure the safety of its employee under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Flight's accident was one of a series of incidents at the mine. Two 2007 accidents left workers with serious injuries, and in 2011, a worker suffered a traumatic amputation of his leg and serious spinal injuries after falling down a mine shaft at the site. Chernobyl. The worst atomic power plant disaster happened on April 26, 1986 in Chernobyl, Ukraine. 31 people were killed when a reactor exploded and caused a cloud of radioactivity that spread across Europe and therefore the Soviet Union. The accident happened when there was a sudden power surge to reactor number 4, which led to a series of explosions. As a consequence of the accident, radioactive fallout spread across a huge area. Long-term effects of the worst accident within the atomic power plant industry are still unknown, but about 4,000 children born in 1986 had thyroid cancer. Consistent with an estimation done by the United Nations, the entire number of casualties had risen to 56 in 2005. An unskier found that as of 2005, about 6,000 people were diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and 15 of them died from an equivalent cause, as an immediate consequence of the accident. Scotland, adding insult to injury. An engineer in Scotland who was fired after being injured during work has been awarded 70,000 euros, which is about $100,000, by a court in Edinburgh. David Hinn suffered a spinal injury when a 1-ton cutter fell on him, trapping him between girder support and the ground. Although initial x-rays showed no fractures, a subsequent MRI scan showed a compression deformity of the spine, which would require major reconstructive surgery to correct. He was later fired by the engineering firm David Ricci & Sons, after which he sued the corporate, which admitted liability. The amount awarded by the court for his pain and suffering was less than the 500,000 euros he was seeking, although he received further compensation for loss of earnings and pension. Singapore. Accident kills worker at a construction site. A 59-year-old construction worker died after being trapped inside a toppled elevator. Rescue efforts were hampered because the excavator was half buried in debris and the operator's cabin was against a concrete slab. In order to continue the rescue work, a crane was used to stabilize the heavy machine. Family members of the victim, Chim Lam, arrived on the scene after seeing reports about the accident on TV news, after which the country's manpower ministry investigated the accident. Norway. Workers sprayed with ammonia. The Petroleum Safety Authority Norway was investigating an accident on Karstol during which 2 workers doing maintenance on a tank valve were exposed to ammonia. One was reportedly sprayed with ammonia, and both were exposed to ammonia vapors. They were both taken to a local hospital. The purpose of the PSA's investigation was to determine the scope and cause of the incident, and to map and evaluate the safety and emergency-related aspects of the incident. Naturkraft is the operator of the facility and had initiated its own investigation of the incident. Willow Island, West Virginia. Another terrible disaster happened at Willow Island, West Virginia in 1978. While dozens worked on a cooling system, the scaffolding they stood on suddenly collapsed, causing 51 workers to fall to their deaths. Subsequent OSHA investigations proved that a series of errors, shortcuts, and accidents were liable for the scaffolding's collapse. In their haste to end the project, contractors attached the scaffold to concrete that hadn't had time to cure. Bolts were missing, and therefore the existing bolts were of poor quality. Just one access ladder was available, restricting the workers' ability to flee. And an elaborate concrete hoisting system was modified without proper engineering review. As a result of this wholly preventable accident, a renewed emphasis was placed on safety within the nuclear housing industry. Even though it's too late for the dead, it's essential that proper safety precautions be taken before hurrying to finish any work. The Bhopal gas leak. It was December 2nd, 1984, when a tank containing methyl isocyanate ruptured, releasing 30 metric tons of toxic gas into the air within an hour. The responsible party was the pesticide plant Union Carbide India Limited, located in Bhopal. There's much speculation over the initial and long-term death tolls, but it's believed to come in at roughly 16,000 people. It's also believed the disaster occurred as a result of poor maintenance and poor management, as a number of safety systems, pipe and gas cleaning systems were all offline at the time of the incident. Many of the plant's valves were also in poor condition. The Titanic. Now, we all know the story of the Titanic, but do you know just how many overlooked safety precautions led to the disaster that has been retold for generations? When the RMS Titanic collided with an iceberg during its maiden voyage on April 14, 1912, 1,503 of the 2,208 crew and passengers died. This number could have been drastically reduced if better health and safety precautions were taken. For instance, there were only enough lifeboats to accommodate 1,178 people, and because they were launched under capacity, only 705 people escaped on them. The RMS Titanic also ignored 6 iceberg warnings before it eventually crashed into one at nearly full speed. These issues were a result of poor training and outdated policies. The Honkeiko Colliery mining disaster. It was April 26, 1942, and World War II had the whole world in turmoil. The Japanese were running a captured Chinese mine, the Honkeiko Colliery mine, when there was a gas explosion in one of the shafts. Now, if you know a thing or two about mining, you would know that it was an incredibly dangerous occupation back in the day, with gas explosions being quite common. However, what makes this particular explosion so devastating is that after only a brief attempt to evacuate the mine, its Japanese operators decided to shut off the ventilation to the affected shafts in an attempt to starve the fire of oxygen. In doing so, they sealed more than 30% of the workforce inside. The death toll came in at a staggering 1,549 people, with only 31 of them being Japanese. The rest were forced Chinese laborers. The Rana Plaza collapse. On April 24, 2013, the Rana Plaza building in Bangladesh collapsed, killing 1,130 people and injuring a further 2,500. As it turns out, serious corners were cut during the construction of the building in an attempt to reduce costs, which resulted in 42 people, including the building's owners, being charged with murder after the devastating collapse. Some of the transgressions include being built on a site where there had been a pond, adding an additional 4 unapproved stories to the building, operating as an industrial site when it was built for commercial purposes. And it was built using cheap, substandard building materials. It's really not surprising the building collapsed. However, the most tragic part of the whole incident is that most of the businesses operating within the building had walked out when the cracks first appeared on the lower floors. Yet they were ordered to return to work, and their first day back was the day the building collapsed. Flash forward to the present, and workplace health and safety standards have improved dramatically. However, constant vigilance is required to ensure disasters such as these don't happen again. As workplace safety advocates grow stronger, so too do their detractors grow louder. It seems commonplace for any sort of discussion that takes place on the web that for every 10 people that are totally for something, there's one very loud person against it. Workplace safety discussion is no exception to this. The thing is, we need health and safety standards. Why are they so important? Well, know that, you need to look not at where we are now, but where we came from. I'll be stopping here today. Thanks for taking your time to make it to the end of this video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I still implore you to smash that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. Bam! I'll be here and I'll see you next time on our next intense super topic. See you soon, everyone.